quiet city of Amarillo, Texas, nestled in the heart of the American Southwest, a baffling mystery unfolded in the early 1990s, one that continues to perplex investigators and armchair sleuths alike. The case is one of those stories that seems pulled from the pages of a crime novel. Over Super Bowl weekend in 1993, a well-respected attorney and family man vanished without a trace, only for his body to be discovered over 1,600 miles away in Washington state. How could a man with no known enemies and deep roots in his community meet such an inexplicable fate? What chain of events could have led him from a quiet evening at home in Amarillo to a tragic death on a desolate road in Moxie, Washington? This is the story of David Glenn Lewis. Hello friends, my name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders. In the early 1990s, Amarillo, Texas was a thriving city known for its rich history and vibrant community. Established in 1887 along the Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad, Amarillo quickly became a significant cattle marketing center. By the 1990s, it had evolved into a hub for agriculture, energy production, and transportation, embodying the spirit of the American Southwest. Against this backdrop, the mysterious disappearance of David Glenn Lewis unfolded. David Lewis, age 39, was a practicing attorney with the Buckner, Laura, and Swindell law firm in Amarillo. A former small-town quarterback, magna cum laude graduate of Texas Tech, and former judge, he was considered by those who knew him to be the ultimate nice guy and family man. He volunteered as a Sunday school teacher, led the local Boy Scout Council, and presided over the Dumas United Way. He also served as the assistant county attorney for Sherman and Wheeler counties. He and Karen, his wife of 12 years, lived with their 10-year-old daughter in a comfortable home in Dumas, Texas, 40 miles north of Amarillo. The timeline for David's last weekend is a little hard to follow. While there is nothing to confirm this, it appears that he may have spent nights at his law office in Amarillo rather than at his home in Dumas. Having worked in the legal field myself, this would not be unusual for attorneys who are working on big cases to spend the night in their office. About noon on Thursday, January 28, 1993, David left his law firm, telling co-workers he was ill and going home. He later taught a government class at Amarillo College that concluded at 10 p.m. that evening. The next day, Friday, his wife and daughter left for a weekend shopping trip to Dallas. They did not see David before they left home. He had planned to stay home that weekend so he could watch the Dallas Cowboys, his favorite team, play in the Super Bowl. Sometime during the day, a member of the Lewis's church in Dumas reported seeing David hurrying through the Southwest Airlines terminal at Amarillo International Airport. He did not appear to be carrying any luggage. At 10:30 p.m. that night, a police officer patrolling downtown Amarillo saw a red Ford Explorer, the same color, make, and model as David's car, parked outside the Potter County Courthouse. The following day, Saturday, in Dumas, a neighbor saw David's red Explorer parked in his driveway. The next morning, Super Bowl Sunday, a deputy sheriff saw the Explorer parked by the county courthouse again. This time, a man matching David's description was across the street, apparently photographing it. His wife and daughter returned from Dallas that evening, after the game had ended. David was not home, but they found the VCR was still recording and had begun doing so before the game started. In the refrigerator were 2 turkey sandwiches, and laundry had been left in the washing machine. His wedding ring and watch were on the kitchen counter. Karen assumed her husband had been watching the game, perhaps at a friend's house, and had returned to work afterward. On Monday, back in the Amarillo area, after learning that David had missed 2 work appointments, Karen called police to report him missing. Later that same evening, at about 10:30 p.m. in the town of Moxie, Washington, just east of Yakima, motorists driving along State Route 24 near its intersection with Rivard Road saw a man walking around in the road, apparently disoriented. Shortly after passing him, they turned around with the intention of at least warning other oncoming motorists. When they returned to where they had seen him, they found him laying in the road, apparently the victim of a hit and run. He was pronounced dead at the scene. With no identification on him, he was considered simply John Doe. Law enforcement in Washington state began attempts to determine their John Doe's identity, while in Amarillo, police opened an investigation into David's disappearance. By the end of the day he was reported missing, police had found David's red Explorer downtown, again parked by the courthouse. They found his key under the floor mat inside. Also in the car were his checkbook, driver's license, and 2 gas station credit cards. Karen reported only one item of clothing she could not account for, a pair of green sweatpants. When police investigated Lewis's financial activity, the story grew even more complicated, suggesting David or someone with access to his bank account had made plans to travel outside the area. On January 30th, the Saturday he was last seen, $5,000 had been deposited into his bank account. It could not be determined who made the deposit. The next day, a plane ticket from Amarillo to Dallas was purchased under the name David Lewis. Whether it was actually used, and if so, whether David, someone claiming to be him, or another David Lewis used it, could not be determined. Another plane ticket, this one from Los Angeles to Dallas, was purchased under similar circumstances on the day Karen reported her husband missing. A Dallas taxi driver would later tell police that on the day David was reported missing, he took a man looking like David from a hotel to the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The man seemed nervous and paid in cash from a wad of $100 bills. As their investigation continued, police came to believe David was depressed and bitter by slow business, the political race he lost for the 69th District Court judgeship, and prospects of losing a lawsuit that had been filed against him. They were initially stumped, saying there were conflicting signals as to whether David had been abducted or simply walked away from a high-profile civic and professional life, perhaps to commit suicide. "It has a lot of earmarks of suicide," the lead detective on the case said. "People don't always do what you expect." The Lewis family, however, suspected foul play, telling police that David had received death threats when he served as the Moore County judge in Dumas from 1986 to 1990, and pointing out 2 cases he was working on that could also be possible motives. Karen noted that David was looking forward to his daughter's upcoming birthday. Friends said he was also talking about his upcoming career possibilities and pointed to his continued community involvement in the Boy Scouts and the United Way. They did not believe he had disappeared voluntarily. Meanwhile, the autopsy on John Doe showed he had died of injuries consistent with being struck by a vehicle. Blood tests found no evidence of drugs. Whether the incident had been completely accidental or not could not be determined. The motorist who found the body recalled having seen a Chevrolet Camaro heading the opposite direction, but it was never located, nor did any other witness come forward. By June, police admitted the investigation into David's disappearance had reached a dead end. They asked Karen to take a lie detector test, which she refused, leading to tensions between police and the family. In 2002, the police closed the case, saying that the purchased plane tickets had led them to conclude that David had disappeared of his own volition, with no sign of foul play. Early in 2003, Pat Dittmer, a Washington State Patrol detective in the Yakima area, read a Seattle Post series on the problems involved in investigating cold missing persons cases. He began searching Google for cases of missing men who were the same height and weight as the John Doe found on the road in 1993. Within a week, he had developed a list of a dozen possible matches, including David, whose picture on 2 websites strongly resembled the photographs of his deceased John Doe in '93. The only issue was the distinctive glasses that David wore. John Doe had not been wearing any, although eyeglasses had been listed among his personal effects. The clothing worn by John Doe, military-style camouflage fatigues and work boots, had been kept in evidence by the State Patrol since his death. Ditter went to the evidence locker to take a look and found the glasses in the clothing pocket. They were a match, so he contacted the Amarillo police. DNA from a tissue sample, also kept in evidence, was compared with DNA from David's mother. In October 2004, the University of North Texas reported there was a 99.91% chance the 2 samples were from the same person. With the DNA match, both the case of David's disappearance and the John Doe cases were closed. The identification of the Moxie, Washington John Doe as David Lewis solved the question of what happened to David, but posed others. How did David get from Amarillo to the Yakima area, and what was he doing there? At the time, there were no direct flights between the 2 cities, and the 1,600-mile drive between the 2 would take nearly 24 hours nonstop. According to David's family, he had no connections they knew of to anywhere or anyone in Washington. The family continues to believe, as they have since his disappearance, that David was abducted, although they concede it is possible he went to Yakima voluntarily. Karen says that as far as she knew, her husband did not own the fatigue-style clothing, nor the work boots he had on when he was killed. She also pointed out that he was not wearing his glasses at the time, even though he usually needed them to see. This is certainly a perplexing case. While I don't believe suicide was his ultimate goal, I do wonder if he had some sort of mental break. While I know that lie detector tests aren't admissible in court and are easily fallible, I also wonder if Karen knew or suspected the truth, and that was the reason she refused to take the polygraph exam. The case of David Glenn Lewis remains a mystery, leaving his family and the community with lingering questions. This case serves as a poignant reminder of the uncertainties that can permeate even the most seemingly ordinary lives, urging us to remain vigilant and compassionate toward those seeking answers in the face of inexplicable loss. If you have any thoughts, theories, or comments about the disappearance of David Glenn Lewis, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.